Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Eternal Ride. Here, a couple of weeks ago, we were up at the ranch in Oklahoma, and Dalton had brought his family up there, and he brought a gelding along that he was needing to make some videos for to try to help the horse get sold. And while he was there with a good gelding, I thought this was going to be a perfect time for us to work our calves. And so we did. I had him help me get some calves worked, and the whole time that we're doing this, his little boy Brady, which is 3 years old now, he's sitting outside of the catch pen, and he's talking to us the whole time. He wants to be in there so bad he cannot stand it. So the last calf that we have to work there, I roped the calf off the horse so Dalton can be on the ground working with Brady or helping Brady, and Brady jumps right in the middle, and he's scared to death of what's going on, but he wants in and then he wants out, and he just doesn't. He's not quite sure of what he needed to do, but he just knew that he wanted to be like his dad. He wanted to be in there working those cows, and so Dalton patiently waits until he gets up there next to the heifer, and they flank the thing together, and he shows Brady how to hold the calf down so they can do the things that they need to do to get the calf worked, and it's just part of training that little boy up to be like his dad. And it's amazing to me whenever you think about your children and what they're interested in. Most generally, they get their interest from you. I think back whenever our kids were little. I was fresh out of playing baseball in college and had a passion for baseball. And so even though we were working with horses, whenever we'd get in the evening time, or if we ever had a spare hour of daylight, if it wasn't in the daylight, it'd be in the living room. We were always playing ball together. And I mean, we spent a lot of time training these kids up on how to play baseball, and they were all good at it. I mean, Alexis and Dalton were all-state athletes in high school, but I spent so much time training baseball and softball into these kids, and probably didn't spend enough time training the things that are truly important in this life. And like I said, where our interests are is where our kids' interests a lot of times are. And there's a proverb, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, it says, "Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it." And I want you to think about the process of training. And whenever I think of training, I always think about horses, because that's what I do for a living. I train horses all day, every day. And when we get a young horse in, we start them at the end of their yearling year, and it is the end of their 3-year-old year before we actually are showing them at somewhat of a high level. And for me in my program, it's the end of their 4-year-old year before they are getting to the point where they're pretty solid to where I can really trust them to go do their job. So we're talking about several years of training every single day with a purpose in mind of what I'm going to accomplish that day to make this a better animal, to make this horse more successful at what is going to be their career for many years to come. Well, whenever you think about it that way, how much more important is it for us to be training our young people, our children, our little brother, our little sister, our people that we're around, our friends? How much more important is it for us to be teaching people and training people about how to be right with God? We actually came from a celebration of life just a few minutes ago of Jeff Petzka. And many of you that are watching this, you'll have no idea who Jeff is, but many of you know exactly who he is, and many of you might even have been there today. But I want you to think about what a celebration of life is. We're gathering together because somebody has moved on from this life. And today there were extremes from both sides. A lot of sadness from people, wishing their buddy Jeff was still here, and there was joy from people knowing that he has moved on to his reward. And we got to hear story after story after story of people, how much Jeff touched their life, about how the example that he was to them of not only of being a good dude that Jeff definitely was, but being a godly influence in their life and not being afraid to share the gospel. I know whenever I found out that Jeff was sick, I called him on the phone and we visited for a while. and he told me the same thing that I heard time and time again today, and that's that he didn't want to be. He didn't want people to be praying for his healing necessarily. He wanted people to be praying that he would handle everything that he was about to endure in a godly manner. And he was hoping that, if he did come through this and his body was restored, that he would be able to use that as a way to spread the gospel to those around him. And if he didn't beat the thing, he was prayerful that people would see his life and how he lived, and hopefully, though he was enduring the hardest thing that he'd ever been through in life, see how he went through it with grace and with dignity and showing his love for God throughout the process. That the whole time I'm listening to people tell stories today, I'm thinking of a verse that pops up in Philippians, and this is Paul talking, and it was a very similar type of response of what I was hearing today. And in Philippians chapter 2, starting in verse 12, it says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe. As you hold out the word of life, in order that I may boast on the day of Christ, that I did not run or labor for nothing. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me." Paul was going through a great trial whenever he was writing this letter to the church in Philippi, and now we see people following his example. And Jeff was doing just that. His body was being poured out like a drink offering, and all he was doing was building others up and encouraging others through his trials. And like I said, person after person after person got up and spoke of the impact that Jeff had on their life. Whenever I think about that, I can't help but think about, when my time is through on this earth, what kind of impact will I have had? Will people be able to do like they did for Jeff and say great thing after great thing about how he encouraged them and about how he built them up and how he brought Christ into their life? Or will they say, he was just all about himself? I can tell you from how I brought up my kids that I have made a ton of mistakes. From the husband that I've been, I have made a ton of mistakes. But the thing about it is, we always have the opportunity to grow and change and mature. And I believe the only way to do that to its fullest is through Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ can change us. He can mold us and shape us into the person that he wants us to be, if we have a heart that is willing to be obedient to him. And I pray that for you. I pray that if you have a young child, that you are training them to be children of God, that you are training them to follow Christ's example, that's where you put your efforts, not into how well they ride a horse, and not into how well they play a ball game, not into how well they work cows, not into whatever is interesting to you in your mind, but training them to be godly people. And if you don't have children, then put that training into yourself. Put that training into really molding yourself into that man or that woman that God needs you to be of service to him and his kingdom. I pray that for you. I pray that at some point you will see the great benefit of being able to call yourself a child of God. And we saw that today whenever we were at the celebration of life. There was joy because people know that Jeff has gone on to be with Christ. And the only way that you get to do that is to be obedient to God and be a follower of his Son. I pray that for you. I pray that this has been of some benefit to you. And until next time, I hope that you're blessed in all that you do.